that consultant wagon rolled onto its side after it collided with the late modern Commodore. The driver of the Datsun was cleared trapped in the wreck and escaped with only minor cuts and abrasions. The driver of the Commodore wasn't hurt. There were some delays to traffic in Morgan and Lingard Streets and added of curious onlookers. Soon after the accident, the road was cleared and the Datsun rolled back onto its wheels.
Came out with all the cars blazing at their sound check before the concert last night. Lovers Like Oxygen was one of a swag of Cockney hits enjoyed by the band in the early and middle 70s. In those days, they were much more popular acts of the so-called glam rock rhythms, along with Roxy Music and T-Rex. But time and musical taste waxed over, and with their popularity fading, the members of the Strait took an extended holiday from one another. This lead guitarist Andy Scott and drummer Nick who formed the band with 3 new members. A promoter realised their music was fashionable again and invited them to Australia for what has proved to be a sellout tour.
If we're going to go on a nostalgia thing, then probably about a year back would have been right, but we were approached several times. There's no way that we wanted to become a part of the glam rock revival.
That was the problem of not returning a year ago, you see. Because it would have been taken purely as a nostalgia thing and not as anything serious.
That you don't want me around after shake off those city blues. Everywhere I turn I lose.
Something that underlines our hard work in the uptown was very
The music business for us is about music, no doubt destination.
I know it's very imposed, in the 80s to feel it. I know it's been there.
I believe that it does come back to the musician all the time. You just have to look at America to see the serious side of the music business.
So you're not an image band?
I wouldn't have said so, no.
No.
This is the third year of the event designed to promote interest in a local industry which has up till now taken a back seat to coal and heavy engineering. So successful have the Class 2 wine expos been that the food industry has decided to take a slice of the action. The fledgling Hunter Restaurant Association will be holding a dinner on Sunday night to launch the festival. Pre-publicity began today with another part of the expo to become a tradition, the annual Media Grape Shop. The grapes are older than ever and they took a heavy shot. The man with again took out the office. It was a period of sheer agony for the interest in newspapers,
Step on my
who organised this year's expo, the Workers' Club itself, the Restaurant Association and the Hunter Wine Society. It will be open to the public on Monday and Tuesday night. Peter Masters from the Workers' Club.
Well, I think the accent's on food as well this year. They've obviously naturally complement each other, and some of the local restaurants have really come to the party and supported us, and I think people who come this year will have a look at the best of the Hunter Valley's restaurants and chefs, as well as the best of the Hunter Valley's wines.
And no doubt there'll be a lot of sampling.
Oh, no doubt, yes.
And do you mind that people might come along just for something free?
Oh, well, it's Yeah, I guess we do in some ways, but I mean, it's good if most people take it very seriously. We haven't had a great deal of problem with that sort of thing. People take it seriously and they take it in the spirit that it's meant. I think most people genuinely come along to try all the different wines. It's a rare opportunity to do so.
Will be a massive exercise in logistics, with more than 40,000 people from 130 countries participating in a smorgasbord of conferences, cultural and sporting activities. Robert Coombs and Gail Dudley were chosen to represent their region and their country.
So have either of you ever been overseas before?
Robert is a member of the Seamen's Union of Australia.
You're a merchant.
He's looking forward to meeting other trade unionists and gleaning ideas
I've
from
been over quite. Well, obviously, representing the trade union movement, and the Seamen's Union of Australia will hope to be meeting other delegates from other countries that will be going over there, and also we hope to meet a few organisations in Russia, and hopefully they'll be able to give us a knowledge of how they handle disputes, etc., and some of the administrative sides of trade unions as a whole.
To let the people of the world know that there are Aboriginal people still here in just on late afternoon going for a walk. I hope to let the people of the world know that there are Aboriginal people still here in Australia, and let them know what it's like to be an Aboriginal and to be in Australia.
Do you think there is a real ignorance about Aboriginal people overseas?
I don't know whether it's much of an ignorance, but they don't know about it. I don't know whether that's Australia's fault for not publicising it as much, and not for Australia not being aware of it themselves, and therefore not letting overseas know about it. I'm not really sure, but there is an ignorance to it.
But obviously it's going to be a great experience for you both.
Yes. 40,000 people going over, like it's apparently all eyes have been set on it since the Russian summer began some months ago, and we believe that it's had just as much organisation as the Olympic Games a few years ago.
Almost every week, the council business paper contains a request for money from a charity. More often than not, the council has to refuse because it simply doesn't have the funds. Councils can't anticipate the amount of money needed by charities in their budgets, and for that reason, Alderman John Moss moved a motion to investigate the setting up of a trust fund. He says, if possible, the council will enlist the support of service clubs as well as licensed clubs.
Well, we hope that by an approach to service organisations and licensed clubs within the city area, that we can have discussions which will eventually will give us a situation where we can set up a trust fund, and we will be able to draw on that trust fund to help organisations that have not been able to get the assistance that they've been seeking from council and the community in the past.
By calling on the service clubs and the licensed clubs, isn't this simply getting the council off the hook?
Not necessarily, because I believe that council will have to play a part in it themselves, giving leadership. We will have to look at making provision in our budget for such a venture, and not shirking our responsibility by putting it on the shoulders of other people.
spokesman from the Shotland County Council. No contracts have been signed for the sale of the old Phillips Glassworks site on Newcastle Road, Wall's End, but the council does have an option on it. That option expires late next month, but it's expected that it will be extended. The reason for that is that a feasibility study into the relocation of the administrative centre from Nesca House and King Street is still underway and won't be completed until September or October. The architect, Travis Partners, is working on plans for the new centre, but that's dependent on the site chosen. The SCC wants to move because there's no room for expansion in Nesca House, and it also wants its administrative centre near its works depot. The question now remains whether the multi-million-dollar computer centre in Derby Street will remain in the city or whether it too will move outwards.
Has resulted in further strain on the existing nursing staff. The intensive care ward is now at full capacity. Increased demand on nursing hours has resulted in some surgeries being cancelled. Patients have also been discharged in Ward 11 or transferred to other wards to provide the necessary staff. Director of Nursing at the hospital, Deidre Anderson, says that the problem is serious.
We need qualified intensive care nurses now in the unit. We have called on other hospitals to help us, and they have been able to meet some of our needs. But today we've sent out an appeal on the radio in the hope of attracting some intensive care qualified people.
Long Jack Thompson won his last winning purse at Wyong in January this year. For this living legend of the racing industry, it was the last win of a career that spanned 48 years and included more than 3,000 winners. In May, he hung up his saddle for the last time at the age of 62. Thompson's record speaks for itself. He made history when he became the first person to win the apprentice and jockey premierships in 1 year, and the first to ride 100 winners in a season. Throughout his career, he had a successful association with the Broadmeadow course and counts 2 Newcastle Cups among his wins on the track. Today, the Newcastle Jockey Club paid tribute to Long Jack with a presentation from Chairman Dr. Kevin Johns. Thompson regards Broadmeadow as one of Australia's finest tracks. On the question of his greatest achievement in racing, Jack is quick to reply.
Oh, I think my best achievement when I was 18-year-old, I did win a premiership. I think I was the first apprentice jockey to win an open premiership.
And what would you say would have been the major disappointments in your career?
Well, I would say my major one was when Rimfire beat Darkman in the Melbourne Cup, and that was the very first photo finish they had for a Melbourne Cup.
And your horse was beaten in that race?
Yes, a photo finish, a short half head. No, I really did think he won, but the camera said no. But they found about 3 or 4 months later that the photo finish was out in alignment, and they had to re-survey it again.
So you think you should have won that Melbourne Cup?
Well, I thought I did, but I didn't get the verdict, so there's nothing I could do about it.
Because what it does is split your trade, and it means that some of the people on one side of the arcade are only going to really get 50% of the people who go through.
Criticism is that the council failed to seek a number of opinions before making decisions. That's why they asked a consultant, Mr. Keith, for his advice. He arrived at some different conclusions to the project manager's centennial project. He says there's no doubt about the viability of the project, but he says the number of specialty shops should be reduced from 28 to 15. If the Keats report is adopted, it will cause some problems. Tenders already called will have to be cancelled, and the plans will have to be redrawn, but when that's compared to unleased shop space, and that's the risk, then it may be advisable to err on the side of caution. The Minister will take the Peach report into consideration when he makes his decision on whether to allow the finance for the project to proceed. Council sources say he should decide by the end of this month, and for the Council it won't be a day too soon, because the delay is costing it some $30,000
to have the car park separated into two separate
but right from the start, Rosebuds United showed that it meant business. Two of the Australians had visited Trazier Sporting Club near Frankfurt, Germany 2 years ago, and now the whole German team was returning the compliment. Rosebuds proved their dominance in the first half, scoring 4 goals. Neil Owen scored 3 and Ralph Mayer 1. But that was the end of the goal scoring for the night. In the second half, the Germans held their own, and the final score read 4-0 to the Australians. Also last night, a group of younger soccer players made a presentation. $700 was presented to NBN's Ricky Blackwell for the NBN Telethon. The money was raised during the Gala Day, which was organised by the Newcastle Junior Soccer Association.
From the word go, it was apparent that the touring amateur West German side were no match for our National Soccer League representatives. Rosebud dominated the game and outclassed their opposition in every facet. Last night's win came after an 8-game losing streak that has seen Rosebud slide to bottom place on the NSL table. For Rosebud officials and fans, there were several promising signs. The most promising was the fact that Rosebud was able to slot the ball into the back of the net, and that's something that hasn't happened regularly enough this season. Leading the Rosebud scoring charge was Neil Owen, who scored the club's first hat-trick. He was backed up by Ralph Mayer, who continued to impress with 1 goal. Rosebud won the match by 4 goals to 0, the club's largest winning margin. The real test will come this weekend, however, when Rosebud meet last year's NSL premiers, Sydney City.
The 24-kilometre line from Stirling to Ourimbah was to be the first stage of a project to supply the rapidly growing Central Coast with electricity well into the 21st century. But 3 years ago, those plans went horribly wrong. The lines in the substation have been idle now for 18 months. The only 2 residents whose properties were directly affected, Frank Hannon and Tony Spears, objected. Battles over whether an environmental impact statement was necessary were waged and won by Mr Hannon in the appeals court. And now there is a 1.5-kilometre gap in the lines over Mr Hannon's property. The Electricity Commission says that was only stage 1, and it intends to protect its $12 million investment and take the matter to a higher court. It defends the route the lines have taken, saying it's necessary for the long-term power needs of the Central Coast. The residents disagree, saying that the project went ahead because Elcom already owned the land on which the substation was built, and because of that decision it took a longer route than necessary on swampy land. Mr Spears says Elcom has refused to talk about the problem.
We attempted to negotiate with them, to discuss with them the location of the route a few years ago, and this was refused, and construction went ahead, and Frank Hannon here took them to court, and they were unable to complete the line.
And this is the other side to the embarrassing story. There's a 1.5-kilometre gap between the substation and these lines. As a result, there's no electricity getting through. And according to the opposition leader, Nick Greiner, that shows a serious disregard for the residents' wishes and a classic case of incompetence on the part of the Electricity Commission.
Using the power that the Electricity Commission's got, they can do anything they like. The really frightening thing of this is that even with the powers they've got, they have managed to abuse them, they have managed to not use them properly, and they've ended up not only upsetting the local residents, quite understandably the property owners, but they've also wasted, or potentially wasted, some $13 or $14 million.